Frankie, that's too much, Holmes. Okay. Oh, she's right. Copy link.
Now we got it.
There we go. How you doing, Dawn?
Sorry about that. I could not find it anywhere.
Trust me, I'm having one of those days. I can't. I was sending you the wrong link anyways, and didn't realize it because so far today, my wife has been to the doctor because she's not doing well at all. Baby's been pretty good, but she's a baby. And
Yeah.
I've had to put together 2 pieces of furniture that came from like Amazon and Walmart, and the bed that I'm supposed to have done is only like a third of the way done. And if you
I'm sorry.
run around and bang your head on the wall, that's kind of what it's been.
But the good news is you have a really great FM voice. You absolutely are doing the right thing with podcasting because you have a great voice.
Well, thank you. I've had people tell me I should be on the radio. I'm like, if I knew how to do that, I would do that definitely. Because right now I'm wasting all my energy sitting in a truck, making good money. So I'm not going to cry about it. But that's the way it works, right?
Well, this is one step away from being on the radio, right?
That's as close as they'll let me get. Let's see. It's okay. I've been away from my little keeper of my time there for a minute, and it was yelling at me. I didn't hit a couple buttons, but they don't matter, so we're all good there.
Okay. And this is all audio, right?
Yeah, it records video. And make sure I hit this other button here right quick before I forget.
Yeah. It's just I have no makeup on because most of these are audio, and that's fine with me.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't have any makeup on either.
How old's your baby?
Baby girl she turned 10 months old yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're 8 months away from the word no.
Oh, if she stays with us full time, it'll be number 8. So.
Oh, wow. So you know.
Times, many times.
Oh, God, 8. Wow, good for you.
You mean good luck surviving?
No, I mean, good job. I couldn't have done it. I have 2, and that was about it. That I was done. I actually wanted a third one, and my husband absolutely refused and said, "You lost half your brain cells on the first one, and the other half on the second one," which is not true, but it's probably best we stopped at 2.
Yeah, it sure feels that way some days, doesn't it?
Yeah. And are all yours adopted or foster?
Not all. We have a wonderful blend. You could not prescribe the blend we have. Our oldest daughter was technically speaking my wife's half sister that we raised. She called me daddy. She called my wife mommy. So she was ours. Then my wife had one from a previous marriage when she was very, very young, and his father bounced and never showed back up. And so he just called me dad. And then we had one together biologically speaking. And then we adopted the next 4 out of the foster care system. And then baby girl, she's in foster care right now, and she may stay long term. She may not. We don't know. Her story's not written. So
very cool.
Yeah, you say cool, I say nerve wracking, but yes, well, I understand it for sure. Yeah,
you have a big heart to take in and have so many children.
Some days.
Yeah, there's a show, if you can find it on, I don't know where it is now, but it's called Back, and it's a British show about a guy whose parents had a bunch of foster kids all the time, and then they're gone. He's the kid that grew up, and they kind of treat him like badly. But then when the father dies, one of the foster kids comes and sort of tries to take over his life. It's sort of but it's funny.
I don't think I ever saw that. I don't think I have.
No, it's British, so you'd have to look up Back with Robert Webb and David Mitchell, but you might get a kick out of it.
Yeah. I watch some odd stuff once in a while, but to be fair, with as many kids as I have a 60-hour-a-week job, and then I do this on the side.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't have much time.
Not so much TV.
Yeah, it's probably better that way. TV is a great way for me to just numb and disappear and doze off and sleep in a chair somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's not good for my back to sleep in a chair anyways. Technically speaking, I really should have gone to the chiropractor today, but we're going to go get that back fixed later. So hopefully, maybe tomorrow. Okay. There's always tomorrow, right?
I swear to God, I think I'm listening to FM radio.
Well, we started this with a $40 microphone that my wife and I both shared on. We bought it off of Amazon. It came with a microphone. It came with the little interface box. It came with a boom arm and all that for a $40 bill.
Wow.
And it was horrible.
Oh,
it worked. And so we started where we could afford to start.
Yeah.
And the longer we did it, the more we said, that's not going to work. We worked through several iterations. And finally now we're down to I'm not buying another microphone if somebody doesn't break into the house and steal this, or somebody beats it with a hammer till it doesn't work. But to be honest, this thing is rock solid. I think you'd use it as a hammer. So this is, I found this microphone because, just the local morning radio show, actually, they do put their podcast or their morning show on YouTube, and they live stream to YouTube. And this is actually the microphone they all use. And I started looking, I'm like, well, what is that one? And I started looking around, and this one had great reviews. And you can walk into almost any FM radio station and plug that sucker in, and you're good to go.
Good.
That's what a lot of them use. So
that's great.
It has something to do with the sound. I don't know.
No, I think it's your voice. I know one podcast I listen. I almost never listen back. It's hard for me to listen to myself, but I listened to one because I really like the podcast woman who interviewed me, and I sounded like I was on NPR. And I said, "Oh, it's my NPR voice. I sound like I know something."
Yeah, now that's a Neumann microphone on NPR, and that one makes this expensive microphone look like a piece of crap compared to what they got.
Well, they all sound good, and I had one podcast where I wasn't nasal and I wasn't umming, and it was just a fun podcast, and I sounded good.
Yeah, it's a lot in the post-production stuff, and I'm slowly learning how to do this because the executive production team It looks like that.
Okay.
I guess I give it the fancy name, the executive production team, because I'm the executive and the producer and the scheduler and everything else.
Very funny.
My wife will join me when she can, but today she's under the weather. But
sorry.
Yeah, she doesn't do anything but get on her microphone and talk. She's like, I don't know, I don't do the tech stuff. I'm just impressed. I'm happy that she's been willing to sit down in front of a microphone, because for years she would all but refuse to talk on the telephone because she hated her voice.
I understand that.
To this day, I don't think she's ever listened to one of our podcasts.
Yeah. Now, she does this with you, or does she have her own podcast?
She does this one with me a lot.
This one. Okay.
I have a podcast that I started to put together for her that she wanted to run. She kind of went cold on the idea. Just we have a busy life. I'm nothing against her. We're that busy, but I think she needs to do it, because it's one I've never heard anywhere in all of the world. And we hold space for people to tell stories. That's what we do. And obviously we're about foster care and adoption. But the name of her podcast would just be called My Rape Story.
Oh wow.
Yeah, just giving people a place to tell their story. And I think that one would be really cathartic for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that would also be very timely with what's going on with Roe v. Wade right now.
Yeah. I mean, timely, even not just that. I mean, there was the whole Me Too movement. There was just so much awareness around what's really happening out there. And when you start to look at the numbers, because quite honestly, as much as people look at rape as, being a problem for women, I'm in a dad's group where we have several hundred guys that are in this group, and I talk to a lot of these guys, and the number of men who have experienced some sort of rape or molestation in their life is mind-blowing.
Wow.
You'll never hear them say that. They won't admit to it out loud. They won't tell you about it. For whatever reason, people tell me things that I go, okay, well, let's talk about that, a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the numbers of men who've experienced something like that as well is just mind blowing. So I want to say it's something like 1 in 4 females experience some sort of rape or sexual assault by the time they get to adulthood, and in men it's something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 7.
Wow, surprising. I would never have thought that.
Yeah, but there's. My dad was a police officer here locally, and I heard all the stories that you don't get to hear if you're not part of that. If you're not part of that fraternity, the things that go on behind the scenes, and wow, this world is crazier than we thought it was. So yeah, somewhere down the line, I think that's still in the plate of things I'd love to make sure happens. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of timing.
Sure.
Because I have at least one other podcast I'd like to do too, and I barely have time for this one. So yeah, I'm waiting for God to go ahead and tell me that's the right decision by letting me get a winning Powerball ticket that'll let me step away from my 9 to 5.
Yeah, I think that's tomorrow. Powerball.
Is it? Maybe
I think it's like 440 million. One of them is either Mega Millions or Powerball tomorrow is big bucks.
Maybe I need to go buy a ticket, huh?
Yeah.
It's hard to win if you don't have a ticket in your pocket.
It is.
It's just as hard to lose that way too. All right. Well, a couple quick things we go through here. Number one, I do have kids running around the house. Hopefully they're not going to come interrupt. The last one I recorded a few hours ago, I had at least 3 times I had like a little short visitor.
Okay.
For the most part, I have a mute button on my end that's not the Zoom mute button, so you won't see it light up. But if you see me pointing towards that, towards the side and look like I'm talking to somebody, maybe telling the kid, go away. Mm-hmm. You're not bleeding, go away. Then you'll know what that's about.
Okay.
I also like to warn people that I have I use a small TV screen as a monitor. Meaning I don't have a webcam involved, so I had to put a camera up there above the TV, so when I'm looking at you, it looks like I'm looking down constantly, and that's why. So if I look like I'm staring off in a different direction, it's because I am. You're down there, and you're not up there at the camera.
That's okay.
Let's see. A couple other things. Oh, do you have anything that you want to make certain that we don't touch on? Anything that you have any boundaries around?
Yeah, I just prefer you don't ask if my kids have special needs. If you ask how I started writing it, I'll say that when I needed the book, it didn't exist. I think that sort of says everything. I also say that they were anxious and inflexible. I'm not going to go into diagnoses because they are adults now, and it's not for me to, interfere with their privacy.
Fair enough.
That's pretty much the only thing. I've had people ask me all kinds of questions, and that's why I have my book on my computer, so that if you ask me something that I have forgotten, or you want me to quote something, I have to read it. If you give me a second, because I'm sure you edit out spaces and pauses, I'll find it for you.
Okay, good deal. Yeah. If I come across anything that, that is something you don't want to talk about, do me a favor, just feel free to say, I don't really want to talk about that. I will note it in the time. Then I go back, I pull out your response, I pull out my question, and it never happened. So
yeah,
it's easy to work around that.
That's fine. There's very little that I won't talk about.
Good deal. Now, what is there anything specific that you would like to make certain? You said you do have a book. I know that. What was the title of the book again?
The book is called Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse.
Okay.
And I actually have a question for you before we start. And that is, I have read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that a high percentage of children that are adopted or fostered tend to have ADHD or autism. I have my own theories about why that is, but I was just wondering if you found that to be true.
I don't know if I would specifically say ADHD or autism. I will say that pretty much every kid who's pulled from their first family suffers a level of trauma. Trauma manifests itself in the brain. We can see that now in MRI, fMRI, all that good stuff. Trauma manifests itself as damage in the brain that we can see. And so every kid who does come into something like that has experienced at a bare minimum some level of neurodivergency, and it will look different for every kid. And like most of our kids have a history of some drug exposure at a young age, and that also shows up one way or another. So, let's see. All right. But yeah, we see that show up as some stuff in their lives as well. So yeah, pretty much every kid that we deal with has some level of a neurodivergent pattern based on some level of trauma they have experienced.
All right. So this is going to really appeal to a lot of your listeners, yes, I suppose.
We don't have any what you would call neuronormal kids, right?
Yeah. Neurotypical. Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for.
I like neuronormal though, because it's kind of but that's neurotypical. Different people use different words.
Yeah. Neurotypical is the right word. I know that one. The doctors can't decide for sure, but they have suggested that they believe that I've had at least 6 strokes. So
wow. Oh, yeah, wow.
I can still walk and talk and don't need a drool cup. So something's there.
Yeah.
They've started to change their mind and tell me it may not be strokes they see in my brain. It may be something entirely different. Might be indicative of some scary things like MS, but we're on that journey. We're working on that. And so we'll find a way through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. I don't know what to say. I don't know.
Honestly, I'm at the point where, God's got a plan for me. I'm just going to let him put me where I need to be, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. I sat here and stuck myself in the gut with a needle earlier because that's what they tell me I have to do for the medication. And, I'll do what I'm supposed to do and see where it leads, because it's bigger than me. I can't control it.
Yeah.
Yep. I cannot control it. So, it's, so every now and then you will see me reaching for words, and it's just part of how I talk now a little bit. So I just got to get over it.
Okay.
And, and people will get used to hearing me talk that way. That's all there is to it. All right. All right. I start out, I've got a little fancy little board over here. I do have a mute button that, like I said, you won't see it. You won't see anything light up if I mute. My mouth will move and words coming out. And usually that's me talking to somebody else who just walked into the room because they didn't listen to the instructions of "Don't come in here, child." But
okay.
But I also on this board have some little sounders. You can forget a lot. Some things like that. I run 2 quick little sounders at the beginning, and then we'll just jump right into it from there. And when I get done, I've got a little couple of buttons for an outro thing here. So when I do that, you know where that's coming from. And we'll usually start with about 15 seconds of silence, just because that allows me to go in and capture what the room note sounds like there, and then pull that back out later on in editing.
No problem. I'll take your cue.
All right. All right. Are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. You can forget a lot of things, Foster Care Nation, but never forget this. You're listening to Unparalleled Studios.
Actually, no.
Foster Care Nation, listen up. This is
Foster Care and Unparalleled Journey.
strength for the powerless, courage for the fearful, hope and healing for wounded hearts. Hello and welcome back to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey with Jason and no Amanda again today. Guys, like I mentioned last time, she's still fighting the stomach virus. She should hopefully be back real soon. We'll see. Then she'll probably have to go take care of some other stuff, but she'll get her back as soon as I can get her back, because I like having her sit here. She makes the podcast look prettier, and I know y'all can't see it, but I just feel better when I look prettier, and I gotta have her do it, because God knows I have a voice for some sort of audio platform and not a face for it, or for TV. I have that face made for radio. So today we're going to talk with an author. Today we have Dawn Barclay here with us, and we're going to do something a little bit different. We typically interview people who work with foster kids, or people who've had foster kids or adopted kids, people who have worked with those kids, therapists, caseworkers, all that sort of stuff, foster parents, or somebody who has their own story in their journey. Dawn does not have that specific notation on her life, but Dawn has a book that she has written, and I'm going to let her give you the full title, because it is about traveling with kids who have some special needs. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are a foster parent, if you are an adoptive parent, there's a good chance, I'll get it out, there's a good possibility that you have dealt with some kids who have some special needs. I know in my house, we have the alphabet soup of diagnoses. I mean, we have all the letters in the alphabet in there, I think, except for maybe one or two. We've got them all in there. So working with trying to figure out how to travel with kids. You want to go on vacation, right? I would say I want to go on vacation, but really I just want to nap. My wife wants me to take us on vacation, and we need to figure out how to do that, because here a while back, my oldest son went off to basic training. He graduated basic training up in South Carolina. We live in Missouri, and that is a long drive to take with a bunch of kids, with a bunch of diagnoses. And buddy, it was a trip. It was a trip, but we were going to go. We were going to get there because he was graduating basic training. We wanted to support him. Plus, I'd never been to Fort Jackson before, and I was in the military. I was going to go see my kid graduate basic. And so we had to do that thing. And it was quite the story. So Dawn, how are you doing today? And tell us about your book, please.
Thanks so much for having me. My book is entitled Traveling Different: Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse. And truly, all kids crave routine and familiarity, and all kids become anxious and inflexible when taken out of their comfort zone. So it's sort of for every family.
Yeah, you sound like you probably know what that looks like. You probably have seen plenty of people dealing with that, talked to lots of people, and you know a thing or two about travel. And we need help. My wife wants me to take the kids to a place that has a little beach here, a beach in Missouri. I know. It's not the real beach, but I'm not driving to the real beach again with a whole bunch of kids, because we drove down to the Gulf of Mexico once, and yeah, that was a trip. That was many, many years ago for a reason. But yeah, so tell us about that. Like what prompted you into writing a book for kids to be able to do this, to change the lives, change the way that lives are affected when we're trying to go out as a family and build memories?
Well, I grew up in a travel family. My parents owned a big travel agency in Manhattan, and then they developed a sideline where they did short-term apartment rentals and villa rentals in Europe. And I worked for them for many years. And I segued from that into writing for the travel trade. So I've written for 4 major travel trade publications over the years. And when I had my children, they were not as excited about traveling as I was. They were, to say the least, anxious and inflexible. And when I needed a book like this, it didn't exist. So I began to interview for it. I spoke to Dr. Tony Atwood, who's very large in autism circles. I spoke to Dr. Ellen Littman, who's very large in ADHD world. And then I kind of hit a wall and I had to put it aside because I didn't have a lot of other people to interview. And I didn't know then what I know now about publishing and interviewing. And I came back to it when I discovered in around 2018 that there was an organization called IBCCES that had created a designation called the Certified Autism Travel Professional. So here were many travel professionals, also many special needs parents who had done intense training on how to work with people with invisible disabilities. And so I was able to interview them, interview their clients who are special needs families, and a lot more information on the internet in 2019 than there was in 2000s, early 2000s. And thanks to a pandemic that kept me inside for 2 years, the book got written.
Yeah, I remember the internet of early 2000s. It was mostly America Online and chat rooms, wasn't it?
Yeah, there wasn't the amount of research material online that there is now that would give me a clue of who to go and speak to further. So it was definitely a learning experience. And I knew, like I said, a lot more about the publishing world in 2019, because in the meantime, between starting this book and actually writing it, I had written 7 other books. So
that'll get you some experience.
Yeah. But they were fiction. This is my first. It should have been my first book. It's my 8th book, but it's my first nonfiction book.
Okay. Yeah. I have about 6 books written in my head, and Amazon won't sell them when they're in my head.
Yeah.
I'm just too busy to have taken the time to, well, let's be honest. I'm really busy, and I've chosen other things over the time that would be required to sit down and write a book, because
Sure.
I think I've got about 30,000 words written somewhere in a file that needs to be gone over and looked at and worked on and all that good stuff. But maybe someday I'll join the ranks of an author as well. But until then, I'm just going to have to settle with talking to people and spreading what I can find out there on the internet, and find people who can give us knowledge like you and experience and tell us what it is that we need to know to at least point us in the right direction to make this a successful endeavor.
Sure. So what else can I tell you? What else would you like to know?
Okay, so I'm going to pack all the kids up and drive, several hours down the road. Now, mind you, in my house, we have, what do we have? ADHD. And I really think that that particular diagnosis needs like a next level, like a premium level, because I have one.
ADHD premium. That's great.
I have one of those. We have some dysregulation disorders. We have all kinds of stuff amongst it. Well, our 4 youngest kids who came when they've all experienced some level of drug exposure, and as we know now, all the traumas that come from that style of life that they lived before they were here, the traumas that come from the loss of first family, all the different things that trauma causes some level of brain damage, and that manifests itself as a diagnosis typically. And I'm going to pack all these kids in a car at some point when my wife finally makes me, and drag them down the road. What do I need to do to start off with, just to figure out how to be successful so I don't end up losing my crap and getting there with less hair on my head than I have when I leave?
Have any of these children never traveled?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we got baby girl with us right now, and she hates the car, so that'll be fun. Which is weird because most babies like car rides. She does not. She's like, screw you guys, I'm going to be different. Then I have a 7 and an 8-year-old who've never really done any traveling. And then My older daughter, she's done a little bit. So yeah, I would say the youngest portion of them have never spent any real time in a car, and none of them have seen an airplane yet.
Okay. So in the book, I'm very clear that we should start small and introduce the concept of travel way before the trip. And because the whole idea of travel is foreign to kids who, again, crave familiarity, crave predictability, and that's what's going to be missing when you travel. So, but there are ways to make the unfamiliar familiar to them, other than short car rides that lead up to the big one, because they have been in the car.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they've been in for an hour or two.
Oh yeah, we took about an hour and a half trip here recently out to the one of the state colleges where my daughter was doing a thing, and yeah, they've been there. I'm not going to say it was entirely successful, but they've been in the car and we survived it.
Okay, so what's really important, since I do recommend doing small things before long things, is to look at what didn't work during the short trip, because those are your triggers, and that's where you can make changes for the longer trip. So were there specific, I am going to get into the action steps in a second, but since we have you and we can talk about your trip, what exactly were the issues when you were driving?
Primarily two little boys who have sibling rivalry that goes like beyond normal. And if we could build a brick wall in between the seats in the car, that would be helpful. Okay, so electronics, if you have it, can create sort of like that brick wall, because they should have noise canceling headphones. And if you have iPads or any sort of electronics to keep them busy, that's a big help. Everybody recommends never going anywhere without your noise canceling headphones and whatever you have to store television shows and movies on. So if that's something that's done in your family, that would be a big help. The other ways to introduce travel to those who've never done it before, you could bring in picture books with the kids' favorite characters in travel situations. And I list some in the book, but your local librarian can, recommend a bunch more. You can do role playing. You can have social stories. I'm not sure if you know what a social story is or your listeners do, but Carol Gray has written a book about social stories, which are narratives that you write with the child's point of view that go over some of the upcoming things to look forward to and issues that might occur, and give them answers ahead of time or strategies of how to deal with them. So really worth looking into Carol Gray's book. And I do talk about these, very important to do videos. So if you want to introduce kids to where they're going to be stopping, like hotels or venues that you're going to be visiting along the way, always good to look at videos that can show you what you'll be encountering. So again, you've made the unfamiliar familiar. And thanks to YouTube and suppliers who have videos, you can pretty much do this for anywhere you're going to. So then mini experiences. We already talked about maybe having a short car trip before a long one, but for kids who have never slept in a bedroom other than their own, and now they're going to be sleeping in a strange hotel that could cost you a lot of money. Before you do that, why not go to a friend's house or a relative's house for one night and have them experience what it's like to sleep somewhere else for free? Because right away, you'll see where the triggers are, and you'll see if your children need the familiar scent and texture of their own sheets and blankets. Don't wash them before you travel, because you want that scent to be with them. Their own toiletries. Again, kids with autism, this is a sensory disorder, so you want to deal with the sensations and the sensory issues that they know. You may want to bring a fan to drown out the sound from the hallway. You might need a nightlight, but you'll know this right away, and then you'll be one step ahead of the game. So that's number one, is to create the concept of travel for them, so they understand a little bit about what's going to be happening. And the next thing is to over prepare. And the hint is that there's no such thing as over preparing. You should really map out that trip from beginning to end in your mind, break it up every single, you're going from the house to the airport
or you're just going to your car and you have to make sure your car is in good shape, because you don't want an issue with excessive noise in the car. God forbid that the car breaks down. You don't want that. You want to kind of drive when there isn't rush hour. You want to gauge the trip to your children's timing. So if they all sleep at night, maybe that's a really good time to drive, because during the day you could be making stops that are built around the child's interests. So the actual trip could be the fun part for them as opposed to just the destination. Things like that are very helpful, as well as getting the child's buy-in. So creating choices for them about your final destination or what you're going to do every day, all pre-approved by you, so they have some control. This is going to be more difficult for you because you have so many different opinions that will come into the mix, and there'll have to be some sort of compromise. But if everybody feels they've gotten something, then they have something to look forward to during the day, and they feel like they've had some level of control, and then you're getting their buy-in, and they have a vested interest in the success of the trip.
Well, it sounds like I've done most of those things all wrong in the past.
Me too. I did them all wrong too. None of this is my story, believe me.
Yeah, except for the one time I have a good friend of mine, and we've known each other since Steve, my buddy Steve, since he was Stevie. I've known him, I think we were probably 4 or 5 years old when I met him, and he was getting married out in Colorado, and of course we're in mid-Missouri. It's about a 12-hour drive. And I think the one thing that we did do correctly is I looked at my wife, and this was many years ago. I said, this would be easier if they slept. And I drive for a living, and I drive a lot at night. Not anymore, but I used to drive a lot at night. And so we waited until about 5 o'clock in the evening to take off and head out into the head west. And they got tired. And I said, yeah, guys, just lean back, take a nap. It'll be a little bit till we get there. I didn't tell them that we still had like 8 hours of driving ahead of us. and we went down the road, and we drove until I couldn't drive anymore, and then Amanda drove for a while until she couldn't drive anymore, and then it was my turn to get back in the seat until we were both like, we better find a hotel, because neither one of us can drive it. But we did most of the driving. I think we made it to somewhere like Lyman, Kansas, which is, if you're not familiar with Lyman, Kansas, no one else is either. But it's this little spot. I want to say it was a couple hours before you got to Denver, just on the edge of Kansas somewhere. We stopped out in the woods somewhere, and might have been Lyman, Colorado, for all I remember. Steve's been married for a lot of years. His little boy that he had after that has already graduated high school. That tells you how long it's been since I was there. So, but yeah, we did a lot of that at night. That made for a much better travel plan, except that the next day, guess who was really exhausted?
You.
The driver.
Yeah. It helps that you could switch off with your partner. That's an important part of that driving at night idea. You really can't be touring all day and driving all night if you don't have somebody to switch off with.
Well, I'm not going to say you can't. You just shouldn't.
Yeah. Well,
I'm one of those people who operates on very, very little sleep because my life does not involve having a lot of opportunities to sleep. So, and I guess, honestly, that's been a big part of it, because then we get there and I am tired and crabby and I'm exhausted and I don't want to whine and cry about it, and nobody wants to hear it. They all want to go have fun. And I'm like, you all need to shut up and let me sleep for about 2 hours. But Dad.
Yeah, I understand. This is where getting a hotel where maybe you have a residential hotel with a couple of different bedrooms is very helpful, because then you could go and sleep and the kids could be doing other things and you have some privacy.
Yeah. Whatever you do, don't stop at the KS Motel in Lyman, Colorado or Kansas, wherever the heck it was. Because I'm just going to say that's not a good place for anybody to stay. I've stayed in a lot of Motel 6, cheap little, real cheap spots for just a night when it's just me. And even after that, that little place was scary. I had to scoot the cockroaches out of the way to be able to get and use the bathroom. It was pretty horrible.
Oh, I will say for families who have someone on the spectrum who needs a space to decompress, if you don't have the money to spend on more than one hotel room, one idea is to maybe put some linens in the closet. Don't close the closet necessarily, but the child can have their own little space there, and that's very helpful.
Well, that's a great idea. I never even thought about that, because, one of our kids does occasionally need some time to go get away from everybody else. And he just needs some time to breathe and some space to bring bring all of his big emotions down and incorporate that into his life a little bit until he can get back into a good headspace. And we're slowly getting to the point where he's pretty good at that, but he needs some space to do that. And his brother, Mr. ADHD Premium, he's really good at not letting him have that space. So just creating that space and being intentional about that, that's a great idea because, I mean, we need that space for him.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way to create it because not everybody can afford a very expensive hotel room or more than one hotel room. So I often recommend vacation rentals, and I do include a section in the book that teaches you how to vet them ahead of time. Because there are certain things that you should look for, like a good security system in case you have a child that elopes. There are lots of different things. And there are things you can bring along, like an alarm for the door, so that if your child decides to open the door, you're going to have some advance notice about it. So.
Yeah, that's true. Those, the kids the runners, that matters.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time talking about safety, and a couple of safety ideas include sewing a GPS into their clothing, also taking pictures of them in the morning, every morning. And so easy now with your phone. It doesn't even involve film, wearing what they're wearing for the day. So you'll know and be able to provide pictures to authorities if they do get away.
Yeah, and you're right, with phones, it's so much easier now because my one little guy, he'll leave the house in one set of PJs first thing in the morning because he's never been diagnosed with any specific sensory issue. But I'm going to tell you that for the longest time, we couldn't get him to sleep unless he had a sleep sack, which was, I found him on Amazon. It was basically like a pillowcase that you could zip up, and it was stretchy and almost like spandexy. And this kid could sleep like nobody's business in that thing. But
deep
outside of it was a much bigger problem.
Yeah, they love deep compression, a lot of kids. And those kids tend to really like scuba diving because the wetsuit provides the ultimate compression, and feeling your body underwater, there's also pressure against your body. This was a big surprise to me, but I do include information on sports vacation for individual sports. And one of the ones that I talk about a lot is scuba diving.
Well, that's interesting. I'd be terribly interested in doing that if I wasn't a little bit terrified of scuba diving myself. Maybe I'm going to have to overcome some fears and think about that because yes, we're in Missouri, but I know we could still find a body of water to get inside of. And well, to be honest, right outside of my house, right behind my house, we have a little small body of water called a pool, and he loves that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do teach the adaptive scuba diving is taught in pools. So there's a company called Dive Heart down in Florida, and they train people who teach all over the world, and they also recommend vacation spots. So I include information on that. The other sports that work well for kids on the spectrum or with invisible disabilities are individual sports where they don't have to deal with social situations and working as a team. They just are working at perfecting their own technique, such as golf, adaptive skiing, horseback riding, because they love work, with horses. And what I just found out, which is so interesting to me, is that there is adaptive surfing. And there is a company called Il Viaggio in Costa Rica that has a program that includes adaptive surfing, both for people with physical disabilities and people on the spectrum. So I'm writing that up for the blog on travelingdifferent.com, which both supplements and updates the book.
Yeah, that's that list of different options is amazing because you mentioned horseback riding. That's one of the things we've been doing some equine therapy with one of our children, and it's amazing how much that can be helpful.
Yeah, dude ranches, great option. I have some that cater to kids on the spectrum, but what you find is that when you get involved in a sports vacation, if you have kids that are neurotypical as well as neurodiverse, there's something for everybody. And that's also true in some of the resorts that I list and cruises. There's usually enough activities going around that there's something for everyone. And I will say that about 85% of the book is not destinations to go to. It's really strategies to turn any vacation into something you can do if your kid has invisible disabilities or is anxious or inflexible.
I love that term. You've used it a couple times now, the invisible disabilities. I already wrote that one down once because I'm thinking that's exactly what we deal with.
Yeah.
You know, we have kids who have something going on that the average person doesn't see. They just see a kid with some sort of behavior. And, you know, I hate to admit it, I was the guy who was judgmental when I saw the mom in the grocery store and a kid throwing themselves on the floor and screaming and yelling. Honestly, sometimes it was just bad parenting. But sometimes it's just desperate parenting, trying to get through something that the average person doesn't see that's out there. That disability is fully invisible.
And that's what keeps so many people on the spectrum from traveling. There was a survey conducted by IBCCES of 1,000 special needs parents. And of those, 87% won't travel, they said. But of that 87%, 93% said they would if they knew where to go and what to do. And their primary reason for not traveling is they were afraid of being judged. And so I have a whole section about how parents who are traveling with kids with issues deal with the insensitive onlookers. And for the most part, they've learned that the most important thing to worry about is their child and to block everything else out, because who cares about these people you're never going to see again? You know, you don't owe an explanation to them that your child is not a brat, your child is having a sensory meltdown. I mean, some people hand out cards that explain, but other people realize that I'm entitled to travel too. This is my world too, and I'm going to deal with my child. And I'm going to calm the child down and help the child decompress, and whatever you think, that's your business.
You know, I can so get along with that idea. Many years ago, I got to the point where I no longer cared what people thought about me. If you think I'm ugly, I'm good with you. I probably agree with you for the most part. I don't really care. You know, I'm done trying to impress people I'll never meet and probably wouldn't like, even if I did meet them. You know, and I don't know if this is, you know, more something of a primary gender difference or not, but I know my wife is one of the ones who's like, what people think bothers her. Me personally, I don't care. And if you want to come over and be a jerk to me, well, I'm sorry. I was raised by a police officer. I spent some time in the military. I have the ability to distinctly be able to stop real quick and shut you up. And it's not very polite, and I don't like to do it. It's not like my greatest Christian moments, right?
Yeah.
but I don't, you know, somebody is in that headspace. My job isn't to take care of them. I don't owe them something, and I just explain to them where they can go if they want to have a good time that doesn't involve me, and I'm okay with it. So y'all can go do that, and I don't need that. But for me, it's not a big deal. But I know for a lot of people, they're very concerned about what people think of them in those moments.
Yes, and I would have to agree with you. I think that a lot of it is gender related too. I think that as a woman, we were raised from a very young age to be very concerned about how we appear, because if we're not perfect in every way, we won't get married and we won't be acceptable. And a lot of that ties into weight problems and, you know, eating disorders. And it's not part of my book, but I could go on and on. And I mean, I wrote a fiction book called Murder Worth the Wait, all about how we're really two people, one when we're overweight and one when we're thin.
Yeah, I don't know what that person is in me when I was thin, because I think last time I was really truly thin was probably late 1990s when I got out of basic training, and that was as close to thin as I've been since maybe 7 years old. Other than that, yeah, you know, and you mentioned that perfection piece, right? My wife, well, you know, she's a beautiful woman, but she will sit and spend all kinds of time doing makeup and getting her hair just right. And I walk to the bathroom to get ready to go, and I put a little water in my hands and brush the hair back and maybe put a little something in it to calm it down, because my hair will go stupid wild if I don't put a little something in there. And I brush my fingers through my hair and I go, there you go. You're looking good,
yeah,
man. Let's go. And that's all I do.
Yeah, we hate you.
You're allowed. But I have a wife and 7 children. I can't afford to impress too many more people. So, you know, it's okay if all the ladies aren't attracted. I'm good with it. I don't need any. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm not interested in that. So I don't need to impress anybody anymore.
Yeah.
I actually had a guy I work with once, because I've been, well, you can't tell it so much right now because I have not been keeping up with it too well, but I've been rocking the mohawk for the last year or so. And the whole reason is because my little guy, my youngest, he wanted a mohawk. So my older boys taught me not to care too much about hair. You'll just drive yourself crazy trying to worry about getting your kid's hair looking perfect all the time. So I'm like, oh, you want a mohawk? Let's go. I take him to the bathroom, grab the clipper, shaved a mohawk in his head. No big deal. He thought it was awesome as could be. And then shortly after that, he was going into kindergarten. And a month or a couple weeks before he went to kindergarten, before school started, he came to me and said, Dad, I want you to shave all my hair off. I said, why is that, bud? He said, because nobody else has a mohawk. And what if everybody thinks it's weird? What if nobody likes it? I said, you know what? You have a good point. Let's go. And I went in the bathroom, I got the clippers, and I shaved a mohawk into my head and said, there you go. Now you know somebody else with a mohawk. All right, dude. And we gave him knuckles, and we're good. And I walk out, and I went to work, and one of the guys that I work with, he's a little bit older guy, kind of a crotchety dude, to be real accurate. And he said something to me kind of snarky one day about my hair. And I looked at him like, what, you think I'm trying to impress you? I can't afford to impress any more women in my life, and I sure ain't trying to impress you, brother. But it's just about building that mentality for me to where I don't care. But so much of this stuff goes so much deeper about, are you a good mother if your kids are acting a fool in public? Are you a good father if your kids are acting a fool in public?
Yeah, and you can't worry about what people think because the story and why they're having a meltdown. So why compile more upset or compound more upset by worrying about what other people are thinking about it at the same time?
Yeah, because quite frankly, none of them really matter to me. And so I'm good if they just, they just go on and do their own thing, and we'll go on and do our own thing, because ultimately I think this whole idea of travel that's one of the places where we build real memories with kids.
Yes, it's definitely a bonding experience, especially if you can take anybody who has a child on the spectrum knows that they have very intense passions and interests that they might talk about 20 hours a week. And if you can build a vacation that either is centered around that, revolves around that, or at least includes that, you're going to build some positive memories. So in the book, toward the back, I have a list of special interests that I compiled after speaking to a lot of people on the spectrum. And I list where you can go to learn more about those interests, broken down by state and then by city. So whether your child has a passion for insects or rocks or elevators or construction, you'll find a museum. I mean, it's not totally inclusive, but I do include where you can find more. But at least you have somewhere to start. So that, the child's going to really appreciate that. I have one anecdote in the book where a family was traveling in Wisconsin, and they saw that there was a mustard museum, and they took their child there because their child loved mustard. And the kid's still talking about it years later because, and what he remembers was that they did it specifically for him. They went there specifically for him, and he loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did not know there was a mustard museum in this world. But if he's interested, I know where the country's largest ketchup bottle is.
Where is that?
Let me think of which town. It's over on the central western part of Illinois. It's not Alton, maybe Collinsville. It's one of those little towns just to the other side of St. Louis in Illinois, and they have the world's largest ketchup bottle, which is really just a water tower, but it's painted like a ketchup bottle, so that's what they call it.
There you go. Kids have lots of different interests. I think I have a friend whose son loved elevators. It seems to me that would be if you were going to have a passion, that's a great one because you can fulfill it all over the world. Trains is a very popular one. So there's tons of transit museums, and that's something that's easy to coins, and you can go to mints. There's so many different ways. But for rocks, if your child loves gems and rocks, you could go to a quarry. And I don't think people have thought about that. So I list some quarries that you might be able to visit. It's just a matter of thinking outside the box.
Yeah. Now, once I find out where you can learn all about Naruto, because that's a cartoon that apparently is super important in one kid's life, and And I
know it.
barely say, can you? I barely can say the kid's name right. And I get hollered at all the time. That's not how you say it, Dad. And I'm like, I know I don't speak his language. Sorry.
My daughter loved that show. I used to have to watch that with her.
Yeah. All I can say is, at first it made me insane, and then I got a little bit of insight from another guy I know whose son was really into it, and it turns out he's a kid who lost his parents.
There you go.
And I go, oh wait, there's a deeper psychological. He probably doesn't even realize the connection there at this, because at the time he was only 7 years old when he first got into it. He probably doesn't even realize the connection, why this whole thing seems so cool to him. It's cool because they're doing the whatever fire jitsu and jump up and do this and that and then beat the bad guy. That's what he likes to see. But somewhere in his psyche, it's hanging on to the fact that this hero of the story is a kid who doesn't have any parents.
There you go. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's some of that stuff blows my mind. The things that are in a lot of this modern, the modern stuff that the kids are really into. I'm amazed how much deeper stuff really draws them in. The only thing that really makes me mad about it is the whole the running like Naruto thing, and they do that in public all the time. I'm like, you look like you're gonna fall and plant your face on the ground, boy. Can you put your hands like up where you can catch yourself? Because no, you just let them fly behind you, and then you can run super fast. And
that's really funny.
I'm just gonna go with it.
Yeah, but
I just make sure
manga, right? It's the manga.
Something like that.
So kids who like that might like to go to manga stores anywhere they're traveling.
Yeah. I try to force myself to get into the stuff they're into sometimes because, at the end of the day, our job is to build connection.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be around the things that I want it to be around usually, or the things that I'm interested in.
That's why it's so important when you're planning a planning a trip to keep flexible, keep the pacing to what the children can deal with, whether that means seeing one or two things a day and spending the rest of the day in front of the TV or the pool. I know you've spent a lot on the vacation, but I also know you've done it to create memories. And if you want to have positive memories, keep it at the child's pace and either come back another time or have a longer trip, but don't try to cram 10 things into a day when the child is going to spend half of it cranky and possibly sleeping, and you're going to be carrying them around on your back.
You must know something about my story.
I think a lot of people's stories are similar, and I heard a lot of stories writing this book.
Well, the listeners can't see it, obviously, but my wife was stopped in a hospital gift shop one day, and she brought this home because it's a figurine of a guy with a kid on his shoulders, and quite frankly, pretty much everywhere we go, we look like that. I've got a kid on my shoulders pretty much everywhere. If our godson's with us, he's up there. That's his spot. The rest of my kids have spent, 20, 30 miles at least up there. And that's probably on a weekly basis. But yeah, but that's the thing is, you do what you can with the kids when they can do it. You try and build these connections, because I'm going to tell you, most of the listeners know that, Amanda and I have talked about it. We lost our oldest daughter to a nasty disease several years back. Sorry. And I'm going to tell you that trip we took down to the Gulf of Mexico, there's some memories there. I have a picture of her where we had gone, quote unquote, deep sea fishing, which was really a shabby old boat that the guy would take out into the Gulf of Mexico, and you'd throw some fishing lines over, and she caught this. It's a small, I think they were nurse sharks or something, but they were fairly small. And, there's a picture of her holding one that she had caught, and she's like she's the one going to eat the shark. And it was hilarious, but it's all these memories that come back and feed you in those moments of, that God forbid, if you have to deal with that kind of trauma later on, that feeds your soul, all those memories. That's what you have left. Sure.
Absolutely true. And so you want to build memories that your children are going to remember. I can remember my parents took us, my father is British, so we spent a lot of time going between the UK and America. And there was one trip we took where we were driving, I think, from Southampton to London, and we stopped in a hotel called the Mendip Motel. And all I remember is that there was an electronic shoe shining machine, and we were playing with it. And here we are, this is probably 40 years later. No, probably 50 years later. And That's what I remember. That and the cream of cream of vegetable soup at a restaurant we stopped at, where I ordered 2 bowls. This is all I remember from that trip. Did we go to Stonehenge? I don't remember, but I remember the soup and the shoe shining equipment.
Yeah, kids will never remember all the big stuff. It's like Christmas morning after all the toys have been opened, and you come around the corner and you catch them sitting there playing with the boxes and stuff and toys.
That's it. You don't know what's going to be interesting to the kids. Follow their lead.
Yeah, and that's sometimes hard to do. I've tried to get some of my kids interested in some of the things that I do. When my older boys were when they first came to the teen years, I really needed to go hit something on a regular basis because I didn't have this dealing with teenagers thing figured out. So I went out and got a couple little things and learned how to do a little bit of blacksmithing as a hobby. And It turned into something that as they got older, my son decided for I think it was his 6-month anniversary with the girl he was dating at the time, I had figured out how to make these steel roses, which are absolutely beautiful, by the way. But he wanted to make some. He wanted to make it for this girl, and this kid sat down. He made a half a dozen steel roses for this girl, and I looked at it and said, "Bud, you're setting the bar high. Like this is one." And this is the 6-month anniversary. And I'm just going to tell you, they're not together these days, but she got one heck of a gift for sure.
Yeah.
But it was a place where I could bring him in, but that was only at a certain point in his life. When, I got little guys now, 7 and 9 years old. And though if I do have the time to go down to the shop and bang on some metal and make something, they'll come down from time to time and make a little noise and hang out. But I mean, they come down here and there. It's not something that we do a lot together, and figuring out what it is that they're into and how we can turn that into some kind of big experience is a big thing.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, when we talk about travel, it doesn't have to be far flung. You could have gone to like a festival that had blacksmithing locally, or, a local aquarium, a local zoo, even a flea market. You can turn into a scavenger hunt. You can, an ethnic restaurant can be sort of like a foreign adventure if you include maybe a couple of words from that language and learn a little bit about, maybe see a video of the country. You can turn it into something more. And that's how you can sort of travel without leaving home.
I love that idea. Yeah, because we have one particular little Korean restaurant here close by us. And, most people, when they see me, they do not think Korean, for obvious reasons. I'm a big brown guy with a big black beard. I do not look Asian in any way, but the military saw fit to teach me that particular language. And so, when I did take my boys to this little Korean restaurant once, and we sit down, and I'll give the waitress mad props. She came over and she did her best. I mean, the sign out front said Hanguk Sipum, and unless you could read Korean kanji, like you had no idea what it said. I could, so I did. We went in and we ate, and she was really shocked when I started into Korean with her. But it was a great opportunity to take them to something that they'll never have that opportunity. And they couldn't go in there by themselves and do that because the language barrier was too great. But, there's opportunities like that around.
Absolutely. You can experience the world without living home. And for Korean, I happen to live with someone who is a huge fan of K-pop. So I hear Korean all the time.
I'll just go ahead and say, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm starting to know it's not even the regular K-pop. It's the alternative K-pop like Mamamoo and Janabi and Jaram. And I know all these songs now.
Well, that was not popular back in the day when I was learning it. So I never learned any of the music, but I will say this, that the food, and this may just be my bias here, but as far as Asian food goes, the Koreans have got it going on, man.
Yeah.
They've got it going on.
Very cool. Well, I am sure that when I get taken to Seoul, which I have been told is going to happen shortly, when Mamamoo has a concert, that I will be experiencing the Korean food firsthand.
Well, I'll give you a warning. The kimchi is the one thing I do not recommend to anybody who doesn't have a palate that can handle that. That is quite the powerful flavor and not made for me. But other than that, I'm gonna tell you, some good bulgogi, some kimbap. Oh yeah. You can't get me out of the place if they start bringing that over. But it's that travel idea where, hey, we can go visit a different area, different place. Because for me, from here in the St. Louis area, the flight to Korea and back, And that would be a miserable experience with my kids, I think.
Very long. And I could give you a ton of tips for traveling with kids on airplanes, but I'll leave it for another day because it's the longest chapter in the book.
I believe that. Yeah, I think I would just, do you remember the A-Team back in the day?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember how they got, what was it, BA to travel on airplanes?
No.
Oh, they would always end up giving him a shot just before when he didn't know it, and then he'd pass out. They get him on the airplane. That's what I think I'd have to do to get my crew on an airplane without ending up at sidelined in an airport somewhere along the way and being put off as problem passengers.
Yeah, it's an art to know how to travel with children with invisible disabilities on an airplane, and there's questions about whether they're the ones that want to go on first, they want to go on last. There are pros and cons for each. Every child is different. How you check in. There are ways you can sample the airport. I will tell you, if you look into a group called Wings for Autism, they will have you do a run through at the airport from arrival through up until boarding, so that when you actually do it on the day of flight, it's old hand to you. There's also a group called TSA Cares, which will assign someone to you where they offer it, whatever airports they offer it in, where there'll be somebody to help you out through security and help you through the airport and can spot triggers and help you, ward off a meltdown before it happens.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because if you haven't lived in that life where a meltdown is a very real possibility, you just haven't lived, in my opinion.
Yeah. Don't I know it? I am no stranger to the meltdown.
Yeah. And I think that's what so many listeners are going to, their experience looks like as well. It's that meltdown that you never expected. You are that parent in the eyes of everyone around because everything went sideways and nobody understands it in the room but you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very important thing, I think, for us to realize, because if you are a foster parent or an adoptive parent, or if you just have kids with some of these invisible disabilities that may be biologically attached to you, you still come into this and you want to have this great experience with your child. You want to have a great experience for your kids, and it then turns out to be something horrific if you don't do it properly.
You have to actually chalk that up into a learning experience so that the next time you do it, you'll know what went wrong and how to fix it. So I think rather than throw up your hands and saying, well, that's it, we're never doing that again, I think you have to analyze where things went wrong and brainstorm how you could ward it off next time.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I'm not going to lie, I'm the guy who's pretty happy with going, that's it, I'm never doing that again. Yeah, it's so easy to get to that point, but these memories are the things, especially like I said, foster and adoptive kids. These kids don't have a lot of great memories a lot of times.
Yeah, so you can build them. It's you get to build them, which is very special.
Yeah, because of the kids in my house right now today, maybe one of them has. No, actually, I don't think any of the ones in the house right now will have had any real memories of their childhood with their biological parents. And so we have to rewire that.
Yeah.
We have to build that. And that's why that's so incredibly important. Well, Dawn, I just want to thank you for having this conversation today and talking about the things that these kids need, because so many of us don't understand what it is that really goes into creating an experience that a kid will remember for a lifetime when they have all these other things to deal with. And we get frightened into that place of do nothing,
Yeah. No, I hope this does help your listeners. They can find the book. The book comes out August 15th. That'll be out in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook. It's available everywhere: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, the publisher Rowman and Littlefield. Your independent bookstores will have it online. If you need to find out anything, go to Traveling Different. That's traveling with one L, different.com, where you'll find some original content that both supplements and updates the book. If people need someone to speak at an event, online, virtual, because I'm based out of New York, I'm happy to help. And email me if you have questions, or my email address is part of the website, but also in the book. If you find that you've had a different experience that I've mentioned, if you have strategies that I've missed, or you found a place that's really, say, autism friendly that I haven't listed, then write to me so I can include it in the blog, and it might be in an upcoming edition of the book, because I see this as a large crowdfunding experience. And also, while I'd love you to buy the book, if you could also order it from your library, then it'll be available for people who can't afford to buy it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. All the links that, will be in the show notes, so people can just look down a little bit from where you're staring at right now on your phone and hit the links there to be able to go out and get it one way or another there, and find the websites and everything. So, and I love the fact that you include an audiobook, because I am a guy who drives for a living, and I need audiobooks. I need to be able to have something that I can read and keep me awake while I'm driving. And I don't have time to sit and read a book. I have time to listen though.
Yep. Same for me. I'm walking the lake and listening to books while I walk or work out. So yeah, I love audiobooks. Yep. And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook. So, reach out and find me, and, let's have a conversation. If I can help you in any way, I'd love to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, Foster Care Nation, thank you for listening to Dawn's story. Now take her knowledge and wisdom to heart so you can create love and healing in your family and community. Be sure to come back next week. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you'd like to share your story as a guest, you can reach us at jason@fostercarenation.com. You can connect with other like-minded people on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/fostercareuj. Don't forget we have a Patreon account where you can support our mission for as little as $5 a month to patreon.com/fostercarenation. The links to everything are in the show notes in your podcast player or at fostercarenation.com. And, as always,
you are so super awesome. I think you guys are cool. Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
Unparalleled Studios.